mind. There had grown in her bosom blessed thoughts and hopes, which are the portion of few, but the weak and drooping. There were none to see the frail perishable figure, as it glided from the fire, and leaned pensively at the open casement; none but the stars, to look into the upturned face, and read its history. The old church bell rang out the hour with a mournful sound, as if it had grown sad from so much communing with the dead and unheeded warning to the living. The fallen leaves rustled, the grass stirred upon the graves, all else was still and sleeping. Some of those dreamless sleepers lay close within the shadow of the church, touching the wall as if they clung to it for comfort and protection. Others had chosen to lie beneath the changing shade of trees, others by the path, that footsteps might come near them, others among the graves of little children. Some had desired to rest beneath the very ground they had trodden in their daily walks, some where the setting sun might shine upon their beds, some where its light would fall upon them when it rose. Perhaps not one of the imprisoned souls had been able quite to separate itself in living thought from its old companion. If any had, it had still felt for it a love like that which captives have been known to bear towards the cell in which they have been long confined, and even at parting hung upon its narrow bounds affectionately. It was long before the child closed the window and approached her bed. Again something of the same sensation as before, an involuntary chill, a momentary feeling akin to fear, but vanishing directly, and leaving no alarm behind. Again, too, dreams of the little scholar, of their roof opening, and a column of bright faces rising far away into the sky, as she had seen in some old scriptural picture once, and looking down on her, asleep. It was a sweet and happy dream. The quiet spot outside seemed to remain the same, saving that there was music in the air and a sound of angels' wings. After a time the sisters came there, hand in hand, and stood among the graves, and then the dream grew dim and faded. With the brightness and joy of morning came the renewal of yesterday's labours, the revival of its pleasant thoughts, the restoration of its energies, cheerfulness, and hope. They worked gaily in ordering and arranging their houses until noon, and then went to visit the clergyman. He was a simple-hearted old gentleman of a shrinking, subdued spirit, accustomed to retirement, and very little acquainted with the world, which he had left many years before to come and settle in that place. His wife had died in the house in which he still lived, and he had long since lost sight of any earthly cares or hopes beyond it. He received them very kindly, and at once showed an interest in Nell, asking her name and age, her birthplace, the circumstances which had led her there, and so forth. The schoolmaster had already told her story. They had no other friends or home to leave, he said, and had come to share his fortunes. He loved the child as though she were his own. 'Well, well,' said the clergyman, 'let it be as you desire. She is very young.' 'Old in adversity and trial, sir,' replied the schoolmaster. 'God help her. Let her rest and forget them,' said the old gentleman. 'But an old church is a dull and gloomy place for one so young as you, my child.'
'Oh no, sir,' returned Nell. 'I have no such thoughts indeed.'
'I would rather see her dancing on the green at nights,' said the old gentleman, laying his hand upon her head, and smiling sadly, 'than have her sitting in the shadow of our mouldering arches. You must look to this, and see that her heart does not grow heavy among these solemn ruins. Your request is granted, friend.' After more kind words, they withdrew, and repaired to the child's house, where they were yet in conversation on their happy fortune, when another friend appeared. This was a little old gentleman who lived in the parsonage house, and had resided there, so they learnt soon afterwards, ever since the death of the clergyman's wife, which had happened 15 years before. He had been his college friend, and always his close companion. In the first shock of his grief he had come to console and comfort him, and from that time they had never parted company. The little old gentleman was the active spirit of the place, the adjuster of all differences,
the promoter of all merrymakings, the dispenser of his friend's bounty, and of no small charity of his own besides, the universal mediator, comforter, and friend. None of the simple villagers had cared to ask his name, or, when they knew it, to store it in their memory. Perhaps from some vague rumour of his college honours which had been whispered abroad on his first arrival, perhaps because he was an unmarried, unencumbered gentleman, he had been called the Bachelor. The name pleased him, or suited him as well as any other, and the bachelor he had ever since remained. And the bachelor it was, it may be added, who with his own hands had laid in the stock of fuel which the wanderers had found in their new habitation. The bachelor then, to call him by his usual appellation, lifted the latch, showed his little round mild face for a moment at the door, and stepped into the room like one who was no stranger to it. 'You are Mr Martin, the new schoolmaster?' he said, greeting Nell's kind friend. 'I am, sir.' 'You come well recommended, and I am glad to see you. I should have been in the way yesterday, expecting you, but I rode across the country to carry a message from a sick mother to her daughter in service some miles off, and have but just now returned. This is our young church-keeper. You are not the less welcome, friend, for her sake, or for this old man's, nor the worse teacher for having learnt humanity.' 'She has been ill, sir, very lately,' said the schoolmaster, in answer to the look with which their visitor regarded Nell when he had kissed her cheek. 'Yes, yes, I know she has,' he rejoined. 'There have been suffering and heartache here.' 'Indeed there have, sir.' The little old gentleman glanced at the grandfather, and back again at the child, whose hand he took tenderly in his, and held. 'You will be happier here,' he said. 'We will try, at least, to make you so. You have made great improvements here already. Are they the work of your hands?'
'Yes, sir.'
'We may make some others. Not better in themselves, but with better means, perhaps,' said the bachelor. 'Let us see now. Let us see.' Nell accompanied him into the other little rooms, and over both the houses, in which he found various small comforts wanting, which he engaged to supply from a certain collection of odds and ends he had at home, and which must have been a very miscellaneous and extensive one, as it comprehended the most opposite articles imaginable. They all came, however, and came without loss of time, for the little old gentleman, disappearing for some 5 or 10 minutes, presently returned laden with old shelves, rugs, blankets, and other household gear, and followed by a boy bearing a similar load. These being cast on the floor, in a promiscuous heap, yielded a quantity of occupation in arranging, erecting, and putting away, the superintendence of which task evidently afforded the old gentleman extreme delight, and engaged him for some time with great briskness and activity. When nothing more was left to be done, he charged the boy to run off and bring his schoolmates to be marshalled before their new master, and solemnly reviewed. 'As good a set of fellows, Martin, as you'd wish to see,' he said, turning to the schoolmaster when the boy was gone. 'But I don't let 'em know I think so. That wouldn't do at all.' The messenger soon returned at the head of a long row of urchins, great and small, who, being confronted by the bachelor at the house door, fell into various convulsions of politeness, clutching their hats and caps, squeezing them into the smallest possible dimensions, and making all manner of bows and scrapes, which the little old gentleman contemplated with excessive satisfaction, and expressed his approval of by a great many nods and smiles. Indeed, his approbation of the boys was by no means so scrupulously disguised as he had led the schoolmaster to suppose, inasmuch as it broke out in sundry loud whispers and confidential remarks, which were perfectly audible to them every one. 'This first boy, schoolmaster,' said the bachelor, 'is John Owen, a lad of good parts, sir, and frank, honest temper, but too thoughtless, too playful, too light-headed by far. That boy, my good sir, would break his neck with pleasure, and deprive his parents of their chief comfort.
and between ourselves, when you come to see him at Hare and House,